How do we end suffering in our lives? You see, I went through a period of suffering, and I have to study life in depthly to understand how to get out of suffering. So if you are suffering today, you need to listen to what I'm going to talk to you about today, because you can end suffering right there. Everything I'm going to share with you today is something that I have gone through personally, and I want to help you, because you see, my spiritual teacher taught me quite a lot of spiritual principles, which I began to internalize and began to observe myself and realize that the real reason for suffering is lack of love, lack of connection, and lack of harmony. So before we even talk about suffering, let's understand what God actually created. God created desires. You will think that God created a person. You see, we are so clueless about who we are. We think that we are this physical body, but in truth, we are just a big bowl of desire to receive food, sex, honor, money, wealth. If we were not inside this bodysuit that have all sorts of multiplicity of desires for food to nourish it and keep it going, for sex to procreate the next generation, for wealth to obviously upkeep ourselves, to a good home, to rest, then obviously we will not have many of these problems that we have today, would we? So there is what I want to tell you today. You see, God created us with a lot of desires. It's like we are just this big bowl of desires. I want you to take a dish and just look at that dish and see inside it, put all of these desires, because that's really what God created. And God is the force that gives all of these pleasures. But hey, here's the dichotomy of life. God did not just create us with the desires to receive pleasure. God also put within us a seed which is similar to God's own nature, which is the desire to connect and to love and to fulfill the desires of others. And here's the dichotomy. If we do not ignite and develop that, then we suffer. So whenever we suffer, the first thing we have to look at, what is it that is causing the suffering? Because the suffering itself is caused by the inability to give to others. God doesn't know individual in the physical body. God only knows us as one family. So I remembered for a decade when I suffered because I was so much into myself and I want to win at all cost. Guess what? I began to internalize what is it that the sages had given us in the past, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. What does it really mean? When we are in the ego and think that we are not connected and think that we are all different people of different nations and different tribes because we have managed to develop all this duality in and think that this is the reality that God sees. Here is the problem. We are causing our own suffering because everything we need is there. When I internalized the teaching of the sages, I began to recognize that when I suffer, it's because I am so much inside my ego. I want to win. I disregard the laws of nature and I disregard the fact that I'm connected with others. When I began to internalize what the sages have taught us, to let go of the thoughts and the resistance and the resentment we hold towards one another, and that is the cause of the suffering, not anything else that we may care for in this world, then suffering ends. That's why anyone could end suffering anytime. When we do not align ourselves with this force called God, universe, intelligence, creator, call it whatever you want to call it, we want to just receive. But the force operates towards giving. And the person that doesn't want to give then creates a block in their lives. So when I say that anyone can end suffering today, I mean it. Because you see, ending suffering is a decision you can take anytime in your life. It's a decision that you can take because you will come to realize that everyone is connected to you. And so fulfilling the desire of others is yourself. But the moment I recognize that everyone and everything are connected to me, because the body is just a disguise that shows us a false picture of disconnection, then suffering ends, because letting go of what I resist becomes easy. So the spiritual way to end suffering is to recognize that creation is one. That even though we see ourselves as different individuals with different bodysuits, some are black, some are yellow, some are pink, and some are white, name it, we are all one desire. We are all God's creation. But the truth is, here's the problem. We are so tied to our ego. We believe in the ego more than we do believe in the sages. And it takes God power to cut us off that belief, that false idol that we believe in, for us to be free. There are 5 things I remember I began to do. The first thing is, when a person is so stuck in themselves, they need to find something that they could begin to give gratitude towards. They need to find something that they could begin to appreciate. Nature, plants can do wonders. I remember I had to begin to get plants in my house and start taking care of them. If we accept that that is what we are, one creation, and ignore the externalities, the language barriers, the different cultures, the different citizenship in this physical realm, we can transcend and go to this point where we free ourselves from resentment and frustration. One of the very, very basic things you can do, aside prayer, because prayer is a wonderful thing, that is really the gift of love that we were given, is to start taking care of something else. Get yourself a small pot of plants. Start taking care of it so that your attention is taken away from you because you have responsibility for something else. And of course, pray for others. If you must, at all cost, do anything to save yourself from suffering, is to take a piece of paper and start praying for the people you hold in resentment. You see, write a letter to God and say everything you think this person has done, and tell God you forgive them because you recognize they are part of you, and let it go.